who is the Buckeye itself. Good Thursday afternoon to you. I am Dylan Ratigan at The Ohio State University in the Ohio Union, home, yes, of the Buckeyes. We'll get to our main focus in just a moment here at Ohio State. But first, we can't take our eyes off the Auction 2012 GOP Debate Edition. So take a brief listen, if you will, to an edition of what was something we'll call Let's Get Santorum.
While I was fighting to save the Olympics, you were fighting to save the bridge to nowhere.
Congressman Paul, you've questioned the fiscal conservative credentials of all these gentlemen, but particularly this week, Senator Santorum. You have a new television ad that labels him a fake. Why?
Because he's a fake. Well, you know what? I supported No Child Left Behind. I supported it. It was against the principles I believed in, but, you know, when you're part of the team, sometimes you take one for the team, for the leader, and I made a mistake. You know, politics is a team sport, folks.
Well, full coverage of the sideshow that is the GOP debate with the mega panel, Karen, Susan, and Jimmy, all here in our next segment. But first, more than 6,000 undergrads are set to walk out of this campus with diplomas this spring. And despite all the finals, all the papers, all the all-nighters, and all the student debt that they borrowed, one of the biggest factors in determining their first job and even where and how they live is that debt, not their best utilization, their greatest passion, their greatest value. The average American student now graduates more than $25,000 in debt at an extraordinarily young age. And yes, if you are keeping score, student loan debt now surpasses credit card debt by more than $100 billion with a B in the United States of America. This generation of Americans spending nearly a third of their monthly income simply to pay off that debt. You couple it with a very uncertain and dysfunctional jobs market. 85% of graduates have considered moving back home to you, Mom and Dad. More than half of the students end up at home after graduation. In fact, 16% of them are still there 10 years later. We start with Tamara Draut, Vice President of Policy and Programs at the Demos think tank, friend of the show, which worked with the Young Invincibles on the recent State of Young America report. Also with us, newlyweds Allison and Colin Newsmer, who are living with Colin's parents because their student debt, for the moment, has left them with no other option. $100,000 between the two of them in student loans. And it's a pleasure to see the three of you. Congratulations on your recent nuptials.
Thank you.
Share with us, if you will, a little bit of your story. Why did you borrow the money, and why did you end up moving back home? Just give us what's going on.
Majority of the debt is actually mine. Mm-hmm. I took a while to get through school. I went for secondary education, double major, double minor, and I was providing for myself. I wanted to spend as much time studying and with my friends, so I took as much debt out as possible so that I didn't have to work as much through school, not really thinking that when I graduated I'd be as far in debt as I am.
And so she graduated in the spring last year, and come December this year, we realized that we just have too much debt and we can't afford to live on our own. And we just asked my parents.
I mean, what's the monthly payment that you guys are up against?
For my private loans, I'm over 200, and then for my federal loans, I'm at 200 as well. So
it's too much, and you're living at home.
Living at
your
home,
parents.
My parents' house. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
You like your parents, all right?
Yeah,
we do actually.
They're great,
yeah,
actually.
they're
It's a
good.
good thing.
Yeah,
they like you guys, all right?
A little bit, you know.
Yeah, for the most part.
So, how typical is a story like the one we just heard?
Well, unfortunately, Dylan, it's all too typical. And, you know, there's a couple really big tragedies at work here. I think the most important thing that we all have to keep in mind is this is not the way the system was set up. You know, they both went to public universities. The whole idea of public university was that it was going to be affordable to middle-class families and those above, and that grant aid would help the working class and the poor afford the cost of college.
And taxpayers would pay for public universities as an investment of the future of our nation and our states in order to properly educate the young people so that they can lead our country forward. Is that not the principle?
That is indeed the principle. In one generation, it's been completely wiped out.
How? Where would you point to?
I would point to this is part of the bigger sort of 30-year assault on public goods and the role of government in society. And we've basically taken public investment for our state colleges and traded it for tax cuts.
Right.
And we have to realize that we have to invest in our public good. You know, the economy needs college graduates, our democracy needs college graduates, and the debt for diploma system is just a complete failure.
How much do you two feel? Because I have I talk about people having restricted options because of that and all that, but how much do you feel your options in terms of picking work and pursuing whatever experiment may occur to you to pursue whatever small business, whatever undertaking it may be, how much are your options limited by the debt?
For me, I took the first promotion I could find at my job. I was looking for a job teaching, but at the Boys and Girls Club, I was offered a promotion, and I took it as soon as I could, knowing that I would have more income coming in and hopefully be able to save towards maybe having a house or something in the future.
Kids someday or something like that.
Right. But it's interesting because I feel like your options get hugely restricted, Colin, when you're
They
stuck
do,
in
and
the
that's,
debt
I mean,
trap.
with me, I'm just collecting medical bills right now, and I wouldn't be there if we didn't have to make our payments on our debt and our credit cards and things like that. So, I mean, it's not the best job, but it pays the bills. So.
Right. There's a few ways to look at this. We know that the federal government could have a big impact on how this happens. Right now, the federal government provides a lot of tax subsidies to for-profit schools that create a lot of debt and don't give anybody a job. Meanwhile, they are reducing available funding for Pell Grants and other funding for public universities because, quite honestly, for-profit schools give money to people like Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, and Pell Grants don't donate money to political campaigns. Setting aside the federal issues, what, if anything, on a state level or even on a community level, can we learn about, think about, do to mitigate some of this, knowing that Washington is fundamentally corrupt?
Yeah, well, you know, we're in a tough place right now because, as we all know, the states are facing huge budget deficits and they need to do cutting. And one of the easiest places to cut is higher education. And in fact, after all the recessions of the last 20, 30 years, what we now have is that state funding of our colleges and universities is at a 25-year low. That's one of the reasons why tuition has tripled since 1980. So the big thing we need here is we need stable sources of funding for our higher ed system. And if the federal government needs to kick in to ensure that happens, then we need to do that.
One thing about the funding that gives me some pause is that the universities spend a vast sum of money on a lot of things that they don't make transparent to the students. And so before we go to the government for more money, before we go to the students for more money, I don't understand why we're not demanding that every university in America put up an audit. If you're going to take federal money, if you're going to take tax subsidies, if I'm going to charge you $100,000 in borrowed money, doesn't she have the right to know where that money is going? Don't I, as the taxpayer in New York, have the right to know where that money is going? Why should we be asked to blindly borrow money or blindly give taxpayer money to universities that refuse to disclose the way they're spending that money?
Well, I don't think it's both and, or I think it is both and. I think absolutely.
But shouldn't you know where the money's going before you give a bunch more money?
But, you know, we do have some sense of where the money is going.
We don't.
And,
if you look at all these universities, do you know where your money went?
No.
No, you really, there's no
Do you know where your
transparency
money
there for the
went?
student. There
No.
really
I've
isn't.
never met a student in America, and I've never looked at a school, I've been to a lot of university websites planning for this college tour. What do they do with that money? Charge $25,000, charge $10,000, charge $50,000. You have no idea what is happening to that money, and I just think it is offensive to all of us to ask our students to borrow money or to ask our taxpayers to give money when the people that are taking the money refuse to show us what's going on with the money. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. You're absolutely right. We do need accountability and transparency. Where I might differ with you is on emphasis. We also need to bring the cost of tuition back down, and it's not all a matter of, you know, corrupt universities. That's the only thing I would say. Most universities are trying to fulfill their public mission, which is to educate people in their state. They have become hamstrung by the decades of solid disinvestment.
Right.
You know, they have been forced between a rock and a hard place. You know, if the states cut their funding, they have no choice but to raise tuition.
Here's the interesting
so
thing.
we do need transparency, but we have got to get public investment back in these institutions.
But here's the other thing, though. We have this 20th century model that's raise a bunch of money and throw it around, or cut a bunch of money and get rid of it. And then we have 21st century models. The cost of learning has collapsed. If you look at on a university level or on a secondary level, because of YouTube, quite honestly, because of the availability of information that is free. And if you look at the annihilation, the utter collapse in the cost of learning things, it is so offensive to the characteristics of our country to look at the reduced cost of what's available while charging people, taxpayers and students through the banking system, all this money. It seems, are we crazy? Have we lost our minds?
Well, I think we've lost our minds by not valuing our public colleges, first and foremost. That, to me, is the fundamental value that has been lost. Are there things we can do to get better efficiency with online technologies? Could we kill the racket of the textbook market? You bet. Absolutely. And we need to do those things.
Yeah, they're doing that.
But the reality is, up until now, the best way students learn is with a teacher.
Sure. Well, but nobody's saying that. But the whole point of the technology lets the teachers do more.
Absolutely.
Not less.
And we need to
and
mine
it makes
those
it much
efficiencies.
cheaper. Anyway,
Absolutely.
you have my sympathies, and your parents have my sympathies. And I understand as a birthday present to your dad, you're moving out at the end of the summer?
Yeah. August 31st, we told him when we got in by his birthday on August 31st, we'd be out.
Well, now he's got it on tape.
There you go.
Thanks to all three of you.
Thanks,
straight ahead here, a full debate debrief, including proof that voters